Hi, I'm Amy Porter, and this is my podcast. My mission in over 100 episodes is to show people how to empower themselves through music, business, and media. I try to see as clearly as possible how I can help. I showcase the music that I've played and the people I've met along the way. I'm a wife and a stepmom and a gamma. You might know me as a professor, performer, a producer, a publisher, a recording artist, and now an author. And I'm the founder of a couple of nonprofits. Welcome in to my Porter Flute Pod. Welcome to Porter Flute Pod. It's season 9, episode 10. And this summer, I've kind of happened upon a Brevard Music Center theme. So I thought I'd continue it with interviewing our personnel manager this summer, Sean Galvin. Sean Galvin works as orchestra manager for Spoleto Festival USA and personnel manager at Brevard Music Center. He's also a professional percussionist and has experience with the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra, the North Carolina Symphony, and former percussion timpani player for the United States Navy Band. Sean Galvin is also an artist and educational clinician for Yamaha Percussion, Innovative Percussion, and Zildjian. It is my great pleasure to welcome Sean Galvin to the podcast. Sean Galvin, welcome to Porter Flute Pod.
Thank you so much, Amy. It's great to be here.
I have invited you here, and I have some questions that are posed by myself, and in the spirit of our librarian conversation, these questions from Alan J. Tomasetti. But I'm going to let you describe what it is you do and the orchestras you work with.
Oh, well, thank you, Amy. You invited me here to speak about my jobs as personnel manager, which I do now at the Brevard Music Center, and we just finished a wonderful 90th anniversary season there. It was so spectacular. I also do this role for the Spoleto Festival in Charleston, South Carolina, every year, and that's a large portion of my life and career. Still practicing percussionist, so the other half is some of that as well, and we'll get on to why I think it's important for the person doing personnel work to have a pretty firm footing in playing in the orchestra as well. It's not required, but it helps me keep my bearings. It's been sort of later in my career I've taken some of these personnel positions, but it's been very rewarding, and I think it's been a great way to participate in our ecosystem.
That's a really great thought, that the combination of personnel manager and then musician, it's an interesting perspective, because you would think, well, is that person having a double motive? Are they playing two sides? So we're going to talk about today the role of the personnel manager. Most musicians don't think much about the personnel manager until they need something. So they might need a sub, or they might need an approval of some kind, or they might need a contract question answered. So suddenly the personnel manager becomes the most important person in the building. And so they're an ally, and also keeping up with and following a wealth of rules and regulations. So as a percussionist and a person who does this, what exactly do you do?
Great question. Of course, I mean, you've hit on the big buckets of responsibility. When people ask about what is the job actually, I mean, I try to explain it by imagining truly straddling like an imaginary line between management and musician. And the truth is that if we all kind of honestly think back to all of the different types of personalities or different people who we've worked with and for personnel managers, everybody brings a little bit of a different art to how they manage these similar situations. I like to put them into buckets of like, guessing a sort of sense of percentage on how much they're leaning on one foot or the other foot on the side of the line. And if things work perfectly, both sides understand each other, maybe through negotiation they're in a good place, and the personnel manager just is trading information Sometimes it requires interpreting information or explaining one side to the other because there's not a lot of like necessarily overlap in the styles of thinking or the priorities. Sometimes you have to lean on one foot a little bit and the personnel manager feels like there may be like 51% on the management side or 49 on the musician side, and vice versa, depending on what is the issue at hand or what type of problem needs to be solved. The primary job is to just make sure that there is the right complement of players on stage in order to accomplish the music at hand. And at any minute of any day, that could become very easy, boring work or incredibly scary and sort of crisis oriented, depending on how people's lives overlay with what we're trying to do that day. You mentioned some of the rules and regulations. Of course, in most professional orchestras, these things are established through negotiation between the musicians and the management, but putting them into practice is where it gets complicated. All the big parties might agree about things in theory, of course, but then when it comes down to arguing over inches or a shade of black in clothing or these things, when they come to actual bear, then it really becomes more complicated, and that's of course where the intermediary part of the job becomes in the forefront.
Wow. So it's a combination: HR, operations, artistic, hybrid of all of that. Rule follower. I remember the personnel manager hiring, contracting extra musicians and subs. You don't really have to do that for a summer festival?
Well, I mean, it's at Brevard, of course, that's out of my hands. I mean, there's a system of applications, which I'm sure all of your listeners know all about, where the faculty is inviting people to their studios and then we build orchestras from there. And so not exactly in that case. At Spoleto, though, I mean, I listened to all of the auditions as well. So there's only three of us involved in producing the orchestra component of what happens at the giant Spoleto Festival. So in that case, after I've heard the auditions with the music director, we sit down, we cast people, and yes, in that case, I am offering contracts to the entire orchestra, repertoire dependent, and fitting the right people with the right skills, and all the things with auxiliary instruments. You have to really understand all of this stuff, have a background in repertoire, understand sort of like how, we just played Alpine Symphony, for instance, at Brevard this year, and this is a very complicated scenario for the horns. You need 16 of them. Some of them double on tenor tuba. Some of them start off stage, come onto stage. And so you have to have some kind of sense of all these different things in the contracting and invitation process, or even just managing during a rehearsal or performance.
Wow. So complicated. Plus, there's seating assignments, coordinating with the music director, I bet. And then just building your trust with the people. Let's just tell the story of what happened in Alpine Symphony. Go ahead.
No. You can frame it for us. It's fine.
Okay,
There's a million things going on, of course.
Bruno Bergman, we love him so much that he came, first of all, to us saying, you have beautiful hills. You don't really have mountains. I know, being from Norway, I know what mountains are. So welcome to your mountains. And I think we're going to put our horn call from backstage, we're going to put it outside. And hey, by the way, let's put the sheep outside too. Although bell ringers, go ahead and just go outside and walk amongst the audience and ring bells. Okay, what did that do to the production staff?
That is, I mean, he mentioned none of this to us before we went into rehearsal. So, in that case, we're all of us the sort of stage managers and me and the librarian, or we're all sitting in the back of the stage, and we have a monitor back there so we can hear what's happening on the stage. And at various times in the rehearsal process, we may be like half asleep or buried in our work, preparing for like something that's upcoming. But then if the conductor says the right thing, all of us sort of perk up. We're just trained to listen for the things that are like, oh, wait a minute, do we need to jump into action? And of course, this was something that caught our attention. And so, yeah, it's in a piece like this that has theatrical elements and it's trying to like put you into a world of feeling around a piece of music. It's possible that the conductor is going to have some ideas, and sometimes they're kind of outside of what we would have expected, the way Runa asked for. But this is sort of like where being a percussionist is useful in this job for me. I mean, of course, I've played the Alpine Symphony many times. There's always some discussion about where these bells will be. Okay, so I'm already sort of and so are the percussionists, already in the framework of like, well, we usually will decide, as the horns will, as operations people will, around where will we start. In the read through we have to do something, and then we'll start there, and then so we're all sort of like waiting for the conductor to weigh in, and when they do, then
Wow.
we have to snap into action and make it work. And in this case, it meant getting a whole bunch of stands outside. It meant finding a place where they could be under a cover in case it was raining. And because we're all used to this, you end up you have to be sort of game for it.
In terms of preparation, this was a summer festival to end all summer festivals, all right? So in order to get through this summer, you had to be flexible. Let me just tell you what happened. We had Keith Lockhart needing emergency surgery on his shoulder, on his rotator cuff. So it was an amazing administrative feat to I pictured Wall Street traders. I need a list 1 next week. Canceled pianist. I need someone who can conduct Belshazzar's feast along with Yo-Yo Ma. Can you imagine Nick and everyone, the entire staff, and then you kind of funneled down to you, right? So I know it doesn't change at the basic core of everything, but the headspace changed for all of us, Sean. We were
Oh, well,
all,
of course.
yeah.
Yeah, of course. I mean, because, when a music director is involved, that's when any orchestra, that's when you're sort of the most settled. And the benefit of having a music director around an orchestra is that there's predictability, right? There's an established sort of like way of doing and being, and everybody sort of falls into that. And that's when some of like the most important work gets done, not exclusively. Of course, there are magical weeks when guests are with orchestras. We had an amazing end to the festival, even though it wasn't as planned. But yes, you're right. I mean, once there's an unknown involved, people have to kind of all spin around. And of course, this was from the minute that Keith decided that with his doctor, that he needed to do the surgery on this schedule. The amount of information flowing behind the scenes in the weeks prior was intense. I mean, for instance, as far as how it affects the personnel manager, I mean, you're right in saying that Nick has to be on the phone with the managers and figure out who's available and who's the right fit and who's the right profile and who can manage both the celebration of the festival, but also somebody who's like up to the task and all of these things, right? But as soon as these people are identified, then I'll give you some examples around Belshazzar's Feast, which isn't like the most common piece of music, but there are a lot of elements of options around how it's presented, and some of them are wild. There is a version of doing the piece which Walton originally composed for, but allows for it to not happen, where there are 2 separate brass bands off stage during this. And Walton also has a saxophone part, but a lot of times it's doubled in the English horn, and you can sort of pick either or. So he made this really flexible. If the orchestra didn't have a good saxophone player or didn't want to spend the money for the extra saxophone player, an English horn player could play it. He preferred the saxophone. So all of these things that we had established with Keith about how we would do the piece, we had to sort of start over again on. And so all of this information, and then also of course, Giancarlo Guerrero came and did our last week fabulously. I mean, both musically and this captured the spirit of the festival, and just what a beautiful opportunity for all of us, I think. But he was also asking some very important questions around how will the rehearsal schedule go? What's usual? What is, because Yo-Yo couldn't come till the end. So anyway, there's all of these swirling bits of production information that we have to sort of start again and make sure that are established before we start with rehearsal one of that week.
Wow. Another wow. Behind the scenes is quite something. And you have to really kind of want to be part of the calm before the storm. So, how did you find your way into this role of personnel manager? Like, my impression is that you need a version of Duolingo to learn another language.
It's such a good question. And it was interesting for me. I was very lucky that out of my undergraduate degree, I fell right into a job. I've spent 7 years in the Navy Band in DC playing. A wonderful, wonderful opportunity. After the 7 years, my wife won a job in the North Carolina Symphony as assistant concertmaster, and we've been based in Raleigh ever since. And around that time, I had more time on my hands. I was freelancing then instead of having like a full-time job. And in that period of time, I started a new music ensemble that lasted for 10 years here in Raleigh. And I kept finding myself like not knowing the answers to the production questions, how to, like, every time there was a circumstance of like, okay, I need an insurance policy to rent this space to do our program, I had to research all of the things. And that's just one example. It was every single thing, tax things, payroll things. Every time I'd be just like spending as much time searching around and trying to learn about how to do this as I was practicing and getting ready to play as a musician.
Right.
So, because of the fact that I didn't have a master's degree at all at that point, I decided to actually get a master's in arts administration as an adult, essentially, at that point. I did it online at Drexel University. At the time, I was inspired by solving these problems that I was having, just how can I produce the works that I want to produce in the public and, make my place a better, more vibrant, artistic place, and how can I best do that? And it was a super rewarding experience. Anybody who like has the opportunity to go to school as an adult, I think it's an entirely different experience than when you're sort of younger and just graduating from one thing to the next. So that was amazing. But it also sort of like put into my mind, okay, maybe at some point I'll get more involved in the admin side of things. Of course, love being a musician, love playing in the orchestra, but it's also been 30 years of doing it. I mean, these massive pieces that you grow up in your life hoping to play someday. I mean, I've been very lucky to play all of them many times at this point, and it's fantastic, but it's not, I'm a curious person in the world, and new challenges are exciting. And so this is sort of the framework for this. And then in the process, a dear friend of mine who's the music director of the orchestra at Spoleto, who was just named to the position 3 years ago, when he took the position, he just called me up and said, hey, I have this new great opportunity, but I need somebody who can really, work with us on administering this thing. Would you be interested? And I thought about it for a while, and I thought, this is the perfect scenario because it's one where I can accept a job in this role and this work, but it allows time in my life to continue being a performer. If that call had been, Sean, do you want to do this work? It's full-time work. It'll compensate you very well. It'll be great, but it'll be like sort of the end of playing. I probably wouldn't have said yes. So I just had the right opportunity, and it turns out that it's been really, really beautiful. After that, because of doing the work at Spoleto, they invited me to pitch in and do some of this at Brevard, which has been great. And I, of course, was already there with my family for many years around the faculty. And so, yeah, it was a gradual thing, but it's been really wonderful.
I was thrilled to know you were hired this year as our personnel managers since I saw you out in the audience for so many rehearsals with Memphis, your dog. And I just love it that you were able to kind of come in and know us and then be the diplomat that you need to be, the kind of negotiator, the therapist that you needed to be. And that's just such a great combination for Brevard to have. We were so lucky to have you. Many musicians don't realize that this is a hired administrative position, not an audition. So you got the call, as we would say. Did they teach you in school contract labor? Did they teach you union rules? Did they teach you conflict resolution? Did they teach you interpersonal skills? Did they teach you, I'm curious about the pay scale for administrative versus musician on a stage. Did they teach you all that in school?
Like any school scenario, the answer is, of course, yes and no.
No.
Because here's the thing, like there were elements of everything you've mentioned as part of the school curriculum. The problem is that there's really not appropriate time in order to go 2 feet into to any of those topics.
Agreed.
Right?
And you've got to get your feet wet.
Exactly. So, it wasn't like, completely from left field based on school. This is where all of the years of experience in the work ends up mattering. And from a big picture standpoint around, I just came home from Brevard as well, which of course has a ton of aspiring young musicians around. But there's also a lot of aspiring administrators there too, taking internships and doing summer staff positions that are only a couple of months there while the festival is in session. Many of them were applying for jobs while we were on the ground there, doing Zoom interviews, like hoping to land in their first administrative jobs in the fall.
I'm just not wired that way. And I should tell my listeners, you don't have to be wired that way. You don't have to not play the flute. Like, I would call all students and my favorite presenters, and I'd be like, you need me? And you know what? 50% of the time they go, oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I need you. So that's how I made money. I didn't do a different thing. You have to be wired like Sean Galvin to do all these things.
There is some truth to this, but I just also I don't know. I've just heard. I was sitting with Giancarlo after the performance this past weekend, and he is a percussionist as well, as a number of conductors are. You start digging under the hood and looking at the backgrounds of these conductors, and there's a real strain of them that are percussionists. Of course, Simon Rattle is a percussionist, and Thomas Sodergaard, and there's a whole bunch of us out there. But one of the real explanations for this that they all say, and I think about as well, and it applies to this, is that what we do in the back of the orchestra is sometimes incredibly intense, and it's definitely very varied across what is the types of responsibilities we have to do. But there's also a lot of observing and just sitting and watching the effects of this interaction, that interaction, the effectiveness of the conductor, the disposition of the personnel manager, what happens when people get nervous, because we don't have to play in every measure back there.
I think they call percussionists those who wait.
Yes, and that is a very important part of the job, because you have to wait exactly the right amount of time, of course. But it's an opportunity to kind of observe the ecosystem and watch where other people find success, where they don't, what the types of problem solvers that you like, the ones that you don't quite like, circumstances that under pressure people handled beautifully, sometimes they didn't, and I'm the kind of person who sort of tucks all of that away, and it becomes sort of like a guide for how to manage these interactions that are, of course, every day, every minute, and I just try to keep my eye on the North Star and keep my disposition, but of course it's hard too. Sometimes the right time, the wrong question. Sometimes it's the wrong question, the right time. Sometimes it's, very pressurized. You have to prioritize between the information coming in, going out. There's a lot of things to it that are you're right, you can't learn them in school. I mentioned the young people trying to get into the field. There's an aspiration, of course, the way a young flutist would have about entering the job market as well. It's similar, but there's a context that takes some time to develop, that you really need to rely on in order to both make an established, group of musicians like we have at Brevard feel comfortable. Also, administrators who are like a small group of people through most of the year, and then this thing flourishes into like a crazy active time during the year. And, it's really useful to be able to truly explain both sides. I'm going on here, but like I'll tell you this one little interaction that I had with some operations people and production folks this is the team of people behind the stage who is making sure that like chairs, stands, sight lines, risers, all of the other things like that we need on the stage before the orchestra arrives are set, so that everybody can be safe and comfortable and play their best. There was a circumstance where it was the morning of the first rehearsal of the Alpine Symphony, and this was our biggest production, the most people, the most complicated X factors, all of this stuff, right? And we got the orchestra onto stage, but the morning, that half an hour before the rehearsal started, was like just tension everywhere. And later in a meeting with these folks, one of the production people said, wow, I don't know, it's like everybody forgot to drink their coffee today or something. And that was just his interpretation of the energy that was around the project that morning. And I said to them, I said, well, look, you have to understand, this is the biggest, craziest thing that these musicians are doing all year. They have to rely on their students in a way that maybe is more extended than they might in last week or the next week. And everybody's just a little bit nervous. It's a guest conductor, and darn it if it wasn't like the second day and everybody was just sort of back to themselves and comfortable again. And so sometimes like the production people just can't anticipate the types of things that might be on the principal flutist's mind on a first morning like that. And
exactly.
It's very important to be able to sort of tie everyone together and say, no, this is not a time to react. Just give them some space. Tomorrow will be better.
It's a highly emotional situation with a lot of divas. Just a lot of personalities that are all the best at what they do. And the students are the best in their place. And then we all get together and we rely. You could have a personnel manager and they're completely different people and they both do an amazing job. And they're not like Sean Galvin at all. They might be like, I consider you mellow and chill and, a little shy. And then I have met, for instance, Vince Carano, who hired me in the 90s. Vince Carano, we'll start with that. New Jersey. Hired me for New Jersey State Opera. And I've said this before on my podcast. The whole first row was mafia crying during Nabucco, right? I cut my teeth in the New Jersey State Opera, and Vince Carano gave me every single job. It was incredible. Now, if I was part of the hiring mafia of New Jersey in the 90s for flute, I don't know, but Vince Carano had my back. No, I'm kidding. I'm sure Vince Carano was just the sweetest guy in the world doing his job, just like you. So tell me about the qualities of a personnel manager. What makes a good one and an exceptional one?
It's a great question. I think the ones who are great anticipate the problems. I think that they're prepared. If you really understand the job, as all the ones, of course, do who are continuing to do the position. Otherwise it would sort of like swallow you up, or you would just step away yourself. There has to be somebody who sort of thrives in all of the vectors of energy and information and all of that. So all of them are successful because of the fact that you cannot do the job without intense preparation. when I'm sitting backstage and you guys will come back after a break and I'm there just like pounding on my keyboard, this is often just organizing things that are 2 and 3 weeks ahead, of course, that need to be done. So somebody needs to be intensely organized. That's sort of like an absolute, okay? I mean, after that, I'm going to actually equate the sort of personal interaction parts of it. You've sensed my priorities on this. I like to be the person in the room that's keeping people from creating an opportunity for emotions to stay low so that information can just transfer back and forth.
Love that.
You
Dial
know,
it down. Dial it down.
exactly. It makes everyone better. We actually just stay on topic and we find a solution. It's, of course, we're humans. It's hard for all of us to do that, me included. But man, I can think of some of the initial personnel managers that I worked for all over the country myself when I was young. And man, they sounded a lot like Vince to me. I mean, like they were just sort of gruff, absolutist kind of people. So my first one when I was a student, I started working in the Pittsburgh Symphony, was a trombonist who had retired from playing and moved into the personnel manager job. And he was a wonderful human being. You had to kind of get through the exterior in order to, of course, confirm that he was a really sensitive person. But on the outside it was a little gruff and a little bit short and a little, it felt like at the first interaction that he never had time for you. But in the end, of course, he was great at the job. And I think we can all sort of think about we can equate that transition between personalities like that who were successful in personnel managing and the profile of the people that we see now who do the job on the same continuum that I think we would evaluate and think about the way conductors have changed. There are some things that we just don't tolerate anymore in our field from the conductor. We want them to be the musical leader in exactly the same way we did 30 years ago for some of us who have been lucky to participate this long. But there aren't really dictators out there anymore. The people who are truly awful to individuals in the orchestra, their careers end, even if they're great musicians and great conductors and have a beautiful resume. And I think like at all points of being involved in running an orchestra, we're now able to select both for skill, competency, effectiveness, leadership, all of these things, without having to like accept some other things that maybe we don't want around the project. So for me, it's about making the production work as smoothly as possible. I'm motivated by like the quality of the performance as much as anyone, and I understand that even though I'm not dictating the how fast we're doing this or what the balance is or any of these elements in this circumstance, but if I send somebody out onto stage in a bad mood, there's a cap to how well their performance is going to be. So we're all a part of making sure that a great performance happens. And so yeah, those are some of the things that guide me and that I would look for in somebody who maybe was interested in being a personnel manager on some level too.
All right, so let's just make sure that everyone understands the myth of a personnel manager job description and the reality of the job description. You don't just make phone calls to find subs. Some people think that the personnel manager is their boss. Some people think that you're only busy during the audition season or the concert season. And once that roster's set, oh, the job's done. So it's really good to hear that you're backstage planning 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 months, 4 months ahead. I also want to just make sure that we see your role as an advocate for the musicians, because a lot of times we think that you are siding with administration. So I have to say that back in the day when I wore a skirt literally a quarter inch maybe too short, I had just bought this fabulous black skirt and little 5 points, and I wore it to work. And the measuring tape came out, and a gaggle of people came around and started laughing. And it was like a rite in a way. And I got measured for my skirt length from my ankle. The personnel manager at the time got on the floor with the tape and said, "This is too short." And so, literally by this much. So, I don't know if that would ever happen again, or if you would just walk up to me and say, "Porter, wear something longer next time." I mean, I don't know if we're in that culture anymore. So that's kind of what I expect. So can you talk about the relationship? Are you our advocate?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, back to the original description about like straddling a line between management and musicians. I really think that's actually the job. And sometimes, like I said, about leaning on one side or leaning on the other side in order to just do the job, or just given anyone's perception. Okay, it's like one point of communication or contact in between a group of musicians and a group of administrators around concert production. Any person on either side of the fence could say both, that person does a great job with this, or that person is really too close to the musicians, or too close to the man. So both of those opinions will exist on both sides.
Oh, how hard. It's very hard.
Yeah, and so, but you also bring up an example of one of like the crazy things that often falls to the personnel manager, and I'm going to use it as an example of like exactly what I just explained, because of course dress code is something that is negotiated between the musicians and the administration. In theory, there is a discussion around, okay, exactly, but listen, fashion, bodies, the way we wear things, choices, like it could be encapsulated in like 3 sentences of guidance, right? And it's as crazy now as ever, honestly. This issue will never not be a problem between, trying to come to a conclusion on, okay? So then it becomes just, if you start from the fact that it will never be pure and there will never be a case, and this is good, we're talking about dress code, but it could be around anything. It could be around orchestra setup, it could be around call times, it could be around rehearsal orders and dissemination of information, anything. When it comes to actually policing, this is where it gets tough.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I think there are a lot of choices. But the reason that it gets complicated is because, I mean, I've been around this business enough, and I'd love to hear what you think about this as well. But it is just as likely that in a dispute, like, is the skirt a half an inch too long or too short or whatever, that the complaint came from a musician. Okay? Like, there's always this sense that, like, the other side is the one protecting the language, or being
forgot about that
around the opinion. And so, like, if you just look at it as a soup of like opinions, vectors of energy, all of these, sometimes it's just like, to your point, you got to just pump the brakes, and just wait, right? And then say, okay, is this actually a prolonged issue? Like if somebody's late for rehearsal, anybody can be late for rehearsal, any circumstance. I really care if somebody's late twice. Is this a pattern? Is this a thing I need to address?
Yes.
And any issue is like this. And, making decisions about how to police skirt length, I mean, at that point needs to be like, then the parties coming together again and saying, is this really what we want to do at work every day?
Right.
So it's hard, but sometimes when people are in these positions and they don't have the grounding of 30 years of playing in an orchestra first, they don't have, you can also imagine a time when they don't have sort of like the confidence in order to look at the administrator and say, we're not dealing with that today. Trust me, I'm going to work on this, but right now is not the time to make an issue of this.
I think that's what makes you an exceptional personnel manager.
Well, I
because
appreciate
you sit at an interesting crossroads. You're hired by administration, but embedded in the day-to-day life of the orchestra.
That's exactly right. And back to your question about who are the good ones, I think they're ones that can kind of anticipate the concerns of both of those sides and best moderate them and get to the next performance in a vision that both really are happy with.
Well, we've talked about some last minute scrambles. We've talked about memorable moments from this orchestra at Brevard. Is there just a memorable or funny moment that really stands out, like weather or illness, travel emergencies, funny musician requests, anything that stands out to you as a personnel manager?
This is funny that you bring it, you characterize it in from a standpoint of like what really stands out. And I mean, nothing is really actually coming to mind right now. And some of that is because of the fact that in some ways the entire job is just things that are standing out.
Every day, every day is putting out something you don't know will be a fire.
That's exactly right. Because honestly, if everybody just comes to work and there's no issues and everybody just does their job and goes home, then it's just the most flat, boring, predictable thing ever. And we root for days like that. But the truth is that the days are never like that. And some of them require more effort or more, are involved with more stress than others. But I've had the opportunity to do some interviewing of young people to come and be an apprentice with me in personnel for the Spoleto Festival, and that's been eye-opening. But one of the questions that I ask them all the time is about how they understand the prospects of doing their job from a standpoint of customer service. Because the truth is that if you don't have the frame of mind where you're actually there to handle people's problems or complaints, then you're sort of coming at it from the wrong place. So you have to start there, or it's just going to be rough.
That's such great advice for someone interested in this career path. Incredible. Yeah. All right, we've got quick fire questions to end the podcast. What's the hardest instrument to find a sub for on short notice?
Wow. Truth be told, this could be any. This could be any instrument. Well, I mean, the thing is that one always has a plan around it. You see it 6 months out, and you're like, okay, we need to find those instruments and those players. Hard circumstance doesn't depend on instrument. The hard circumstance is it's close to the concert. It could be any instrument. And part of the reason that I can understand this is because I've gotten that call as a percussionist, and so the other thing happens. It might be easier for me to stay home and watch TV that night than to jump in on a concert, but I always say yes because I know the stress of all the people involved in that. I played a concert, just jumped into it on a Saturday night here in North Carolina with the orchestra that I hadn't rehearsed. I was out of town until the weekend, and I got a call at 4:30. The concert was at 7:30. Just dive in, play. So that's the hard thing. Like when you're on the gun, the concert's coming up, and you have to find somebody with the competency and skill to do it.
I'm going to make you personnel manager proud right now. In the Atlanta Symphony, I showed up always early, even if I didn't play the first piece. And that day, there was a flash flood. It rained, the sky opened, and the second flutist had an issue going through a puddle that wasn't a puddle, and found the car halfway full of water on his way to work. And I happened to be at work and played second flute on the first piece, which was Mother Goose Suite, second flute solo. Yeah, I showed up early to work just in case. So isn't that fun?
I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of, of course, musicians, instrumentalists listening to this. Just whether it's not a matter of checking in when you show up with the personnel manager, but we know in the back of our head who's there in the building. And like, as soon as I see, okay, Amy Porter is here, like a level of like potential issue or stress like goes down.
Diminishes.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And you're just like, the rehearsal isn't really underway until you've seen all the people.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you have to show. I'm this kind of person too, Amy. I'm there an hour before, like doing the stuff, and but it's a nice thing for the people around you Could be your section mates. It could be
Yeah.
the personnel office. Anybody. Once you're in the building, okay, we're okay.
Email or a phone call or a text. How do you get your job done actually? Is it all three?
It's all three eventually. I mean, email is probably the biggest of the three. This is maybe be a good time to just talk about email etiquette, maybe a
Go
little
for
bit.
it.
You know, because of texting and being like a text-based thing, some of the habits I think of texting sort of find their way into emails, and that's fine. Emails can be this way too. But also, I'm using email to do contractual matters as well. Okay, so sometimes an email that I might send to a musician around inviting them to play or, accept work, there's a lot of information in there and there's a lot of details. And I think a lot about the formatting of that so it's as digestible as possible. It's the important things stand out when you look at it for the first time. But on the other hand, like, I need the person to actually read that. Or the problems will just, progress for days, weeks, months sometimes. And so it can be shorter interactions with email after that. And then often it can move to text once we've established a working relationship and that kind of stuff. Usually a phone at this point is when there's a real emergency. As a player or as a personnel manager, if I'm calling you or the personnel managers who I work for are calling me, I know that they're in a bind. And so that's sort of the hierarchy.
I see. So people need the bandwidth actually to focus on your original email, focus in on the details so that it's not the fact that you're going to be right. I want everyone to know they shouldn't be wrong. You don't want to be wrong when it comes to contracts. You want to read every word. I've learned this late in my life. You can't gloss. You can't read the beginning and the end. As they say, the devil's in the details, right? You could show up at the wrong gig. One time I was on the Staten Island ferry. It was before cell phones, and I had forgotten my directions, and I was on my way to a wedding gig. How I got there was an act of community service on behalf of the Staten Island Ferry people. The riders of the Staten Island Ferry got me to my wedding. That's how small New York is. Like, you have to read, remember, take with you all the details of your gig. Don't forget your music. Like, understand that the money might not come right away. You might not get handed a paycheck that day, but that's all in your email, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I don't mean to present the idea that like some of these things don't go wrong. Of course, mistakes happen. I mean,
Yeah.
I've made plenty of mistakes. I can remember like being stuck in traffic outside of Heinz Hall when
Yeah.
I was young, and I'm looking at musicians walking down. I'm in gridlock traffic. I'm watching musicians walking down the street in a different uniform than I had. I did not have a white jacket in my car, and I could not drive the car. So, I mean, things happen. And we can all solve the problems. What's difficult is, when like there's an inbox full of questions for me that they're right there in the email above it. Because it's just making more work and it's unnecessary things. And the reason I'm bringing it up is not to be a stickler about this kind of thing, but it's to explain the reality of it's impossible to take that out of the profile of the way you understand flutist X, right?
Yes.
They are a great musician maybe, but you don't. If it's somebody you don't know and it's the first invitation, you can't take that entirely out of like trying to guess about who they are and what kind of fit they're going to be, and they can prove themselves out of any expectations that you may have formed. But you're just grasping onto all the little details that are presenting themselves along the way, and one of the things about assimilating information or communicating effectively or in a timely manner, that those are ways of really kind of getting on the wrong side of the personnel manager right from the beginning.
Yes. Well, Sean, my demographic for this podcast, you are speaking to the right people, age 18 to 28. So we love that age group. We love to advise them. And this has been incredible advice about please answer the email. Answer. I know you all don't do emails anymore and you really hate texts. So the age group I'm working with doesn't mind a phone call. And there's a lot more communication, but the timing is up to the student right now. And I'm urging the student, when it comes to contractual gig, the timing is just not yours.
Yeah, that's right. It's we're trying to get a whole bunch of people on the same ship, moving at the same time, same
Yeah.
direction, and yeah, that's right. Too many people doing other things makes it hard. So,
In that spirit, what's the best excuse you've ever heard for missing a rehearsal?
oh, I'm not throwing anyone under the bus on this front.
Oh,
This is my diplomacy is showing through right now.
okay, fine.
I will say that there are wild ones, and the only thing I'll actually say about this is that, um, it's better to be honest. That's I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Everybody gets stuck. Everybody gets into scenarios where they make mistakes or it goes wrong. Every personnel manager has heard every version of that and had to deal with every version of that already. So sometimes when it's just like my dog ate my music, it's just like, oh, okay. you
Dogs
know.
eat paper, mine ate my tax bill, and she became the talk of the entire Whitefish Point County Township office because my dog ate my tax bill. What do I owe? So my dog ate my music? Okay, we'll go with that. We'll go with
Yeah,
that.
fine,
Dogs
fine.
eat music.
True,
Yeah.
true.
What's the most misunderstood aspect of being a personnel manager?
I think this thing we've hit on
Okay,
around like this idea that like they have a loyalty, and
I agree.
and I
I've
think that's the
learned.
most. And like I've said, every person has their own opinion about that. It might even be endorsed by experience in some cases, but usually it's just only a couple of interactions, and then they draw big conclusions. There's a lot of information swirling all within this person's purview and at their desk and on their computer at any given time, and some choices need to be prioritized over others, and sometimes my interaction with a musician might not I may not have had the time to spend as much time with them as I would have liked because of the circumstance, and things just spin a little bit in that way. So I think nowadays most of us are inspired by the right things, and yeah, I don't. The ones doing it right are not truly loyal to one side or another.
That's awesome to know. So if someone's interested in this career path, just like flutists' jobs in orchestras, there's per service orchestras and then there's contractual orchestras where you actually work 25, 24, 25 weeks, you work 38 weeks, you work 52 weeks a year. Can you tell us about the pay scale? Is it like the musician, since you're both a musician and an admin person? Are they kind of comparable? I'm not asking you to divulge any numbers, but for someone going into admin, they might be thinking, oh, now I can really make the bucks.
Here's the difference. The director, the leader of the personnel office, like for instance, in a 52 week orchestra, there's a head personnel person. There's at least one assistant, and oftentimes two. So some of your characterizations earlier of like, oh, well, the personnel manager just deals with auditions or just hires extras. One of those entry level lower positions, that might be the extent of the job for a while. And so those people, so here's the
Are they
difference.
per hour? Like get paid so and so an hour at the.
It depends on the orchestra. I mean, in
Okay.
a big orchestra, they would be on, a full season contracts,
Okay.
just the way anybody else would be hired, but the rate of compensation would definitely be lower.
Okay.
The leader of the personnel office, the compensation is kind of akin with where musicians are. They're there on the same hours.
Good to
They're
know.
doing that kind of thing. But you have to climb into these positions, though. The difference is, like, of course, like musicians are chasing seats in orchestras through the audition process. That part doesn't exist. You might gradually make more money in your career by having bigger and bigger jobs with more and more work attached to the contract. But if you win as the new piccolo player of the, Orchestra X 52 weeks, they don't pay you an entry level salary. You're there making the contract
Exactly.
negotiated scale, um, but also like it's only going to be through negotiation that that person makes more money, though. Um, in admin, like a lot of people who come out of school and get into the field, there is a sort of progressive climb. You have to be willing to move around a little bit. You have to be willing to jump between organizations a bit before you kind of land in the one that is like, okay, this is where I can stay for a
Right.
while.
I have enjoyed as a soloist watching, I'm not going to name any names, but I can name three that I've seen as a soloist, 25 years ago, and they were the artistic administrator. And then at the next orchestra, I show up and they're their vice president or whatever. And then I show up and this person's now the president of the orchestra. Yes, you have to work your way up, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it. Like you're not going to be stuck in your hourly wage forever if you choose personnel management, I think. Like you said I was a percussionist and then I started asking questions and I think you can do that as an artistic administrator, right? If you have aspirations of becoming a president of an orchestra, and actually a really good one, we need them. We need them. If you really want to be that person, start now when you're young.
It's really the only way. There's too many things that you have to understand about the totality of how an orchestra works from a business standpoint, but also just in its community. And
Yeah.
you have to see a number of examples of this. You know, much like a player or like a person who gets their first faculty teaching job at a small school. This is often what it's like to enter arts administration and performing arts. These places are not optimized for you to move up through the ranks there. Okay, so when there's somebody, a young staffer in any department of an orchestra, it might be a very bright person. This might be somebody that you bet on seeing at your next soloist appearance, like 20 years down. You know, and they're running the place. Almost impossible to climb that ladder in one organization. The next step isn't there. Somebody's already in it. We have to optimize all of like this so that we don't have like just open seats waiting for people to progress. And that's hard, you know, like oftentimes people doing these jobs are trying to start their families or trying to establish themselves, or they've chosen a place to live for life circumstances. And we lose talent in our field this way,
Yeah,
honestly, because
it's
like to
rare.
take the next step, they might have to move across the country.
Exactly. Exactly. And sometimes you got to make that move across the country and start a new life, start a new job, and make that change. So it's a really fine line. Final question for you, Sean. What's your favorite part of the job?
No, I mean definitely just getting to know the people. I mean, it's it's absolutely the best. My world has expanded so much since I started doing this work. It's only been 3 years, but I mean, I'm sure it's much like the way you just watch your flute studio students graduate and go out into the world every year. This is the way I feel about these Spoleto orchestras that I've invited every person to come join the orchestra. And like I just my life is so fulfilled by watching them go spread their wings. Many of them are in big, great, wonderful orchestras now, or teaching, or doing any number of different things. And it's just really beautiful. It's like being involved with people who are at that stage of their optimism around music. And I mean, we need this energy and these types of people out in the world. And it's just a real pleasure and honor to kind of serve these people and these things. It's the best part.
Serving, the best part. Well, I
Very good.
appreciate it. And I appreciate you so much that every few days I would bring you a gift. And that gift at Brevard was usually in the form of a sparkling water. Or one time I thought I brought you those little made good granola bites, the chocolate chip bites. And you said to me in the season, they give me a little lift when I turn to it when I need it. I called them a bribe, but I was joking. I just want you to know that the musicians appreciate you. And if it could come from a person who knew enough about the personnel manager to make sure they know they were appreciated, because I don't think you guys get appreciated enough.
I mean, I appreciate that. Of course, in life,
Appreciation all around.
everybody loves a gift. Right? Everybody loves a gift. We'll
Yeah.
start with that. It was very generous of you. And look, I've been on the stage getting the limelight and the bows for a long time. It's okay to not, though, too. And I think a lot of people who are working, making an orchestra concert happen in the back they understand they're part of it, and
Yeah.
and their place in making it work. But yeah, I mean, everyone wants to be seen a little bit, and I appreciate you're doing that throughout the summer. It gave me little pickups along the way, which I
Oh,
appreciate.
good. Well, we should just then quietly give the sideline story that you are the husband of my BFF at Brevard. So, Sean Galvin, husband of Karen.
I would not be doing this job at Brevard without Karen joining the faculty 7 years ago and just being around and in the end, somebody thought like, okay, well maybe he could help us solve a problem here, and that's been wonderful. But it's been great to watch over the years. It's been perfect for our family to be there. Getting to know you has been wonderful, and everything about Brevard is inspiring, and the way that people come and they just kind of try to make an experience for all of these hundreds of students, and it's just really a beautiful way to spend a month or two in the summer.
Well, thank you for being such advocates and activists for musicians around the country. I know that you and Karen do your part to fight the fight for the musicians of the symphony orchestra. So, Sean Galvin, thank you from the bottom of my heart for being in Porter Flute Pod today.
Oh, it is my pleasure. Thanks, Amy. This was fun.
Thank you, Sean Galvin, for being in Porter Flute Pod. You have opened our eyes to some of the realities of being a personnel manager. I am, as they say, steeping with gratitude for your professionalism and your friendship. Don't forget, he was talking about the vibe that you set is set immediately. We're talking emails, phone calls. We're talking showing up on time. We're talking being polite to your colleagues. Listen, I say it all the time. Just say please and thank you. Say hello and goodbye. It's not very hard. I hope you'll pick up a copy of my book, Anatomy of Sound. Wherever you pick up your book, you can find it in hardback, paperback, or Kindle. Thank you, everyone, for being in Porter Flute Pod. I'm so grateful for you.